Hey guys, Video James, and this is going to be how to use Golisopod and a how to use on Mimikyu. I did a how to use on Mimikyu already, but that was when basically only really one set existed for Mimikyu, and people hadn't really come up with the various strategies, but I found a few more ways that Mimikyu can work, and I've tried to formulate some of the ways that Golisopod can work, which is actually more than I thought. I thought it would be basic, just one sweet Pokemon, but he's actually a lot more useful than I thought. So we're going to start out looking at Golisopod. He's got the bug water typing, which unfortunately means he's going to be weak to flying, rock, and electric, and as of this generation, those are going to be really common. But he does have the emergency exit ability, so when his hit points drop to 50 or less, he'll switch out. And it works once per battle. But that's really good, because when we look at Golisopod's stats, he's got a 140 on the defense, a 125 in the attack, and a 90 in the special defense. So he's going to be able to take a hit. So even if he does take a super effective hit, he'll be able to at least survive it with almost half HP, and then emergency exit will go off. And with that 125 attack, you're reaching incredible heights. You're hitting 380 with a beneficial nature and max EVs. That's extremely impressive for a Golisopod, because you would think it would just be complete sweep and special with how many special moves it has. Like, when we look at this moveset, we see stuff like Frost Breath, we see Surf, we see Waterfall, or not Waterfall, we see Dark Pulse, we see Sludge Wave, we see Sludge Bomb, and not a lot of physicals. But then we go out to what he learns, and he gets stuff like Liquidation, Swords Dance, Rock Smash, and First Impression. So, from first glance, it seems like he's going to be just a walling out attacker, but there are a few more ways you can use him. And then the next one we got is my boy Mimikyu. And like I said before, I did do a how to use on Mimikyu, but he didn't really have much of a strategy at that point, because no one had really figured out how to use him effectively. But a few people have worked it out, and they found out the better ways to use him. And like we said before, Ghost Fairy. So he's going to be weak to Ghost, Steel, and that's it. That's the only thing that's going to hurt a Mimikyu is a Ghost and Steel. So, boy, you gotta bring a Metagross to kill this. Anyway, it's got the Disguise ability, which is the most broken ability ever, just because it prevents you from taking damage from any actual damaging move. So your opponent wants to hit you with... I'm trying to think of a move. Your opponent wants to hit you with a Thunderbolt. Okay, Disguise. Or your opponent wants to hit you with Earthquake. Okay, Disguise. Or your opponent even wants to try and hit you with Fissure, and they somehow manage to land a hit. Okay, Disguise. I survive. The only bad thing about Disguise is that while weather and status, like burn, poison, and hail and all that, won't break the Disguise, Confusion will. So, that's kind of the drawback to Disguise, and I mean, I guess it's fair, because you can't have that OP of an ability, otherwise he'd be ranked Uber in every forum from this point on. And when you look at his movesets, he's got a lot of just straight up beat away at the Pokemon. Like, he's got Wood Hammer, he's got Shadow Sneak, and Play Rough, and all that. And, honestly, when I saw Wood Hammer, I was confused. I was like, the heck you doing here? No. Anyway, then we go into the moves he can get from TMs, and he's got stuff like Leech Life and Frustration and all that. And he even gets Charge Beam, so you can get a special Mimikyu if you want. But he does work better as a physical, because when we look at his stats, we see he's basic rounded in the defenses, 105 in that special defense, 80 in the defense, but then we see he gets the 90 in attack, so it becomes pretty evident that he's going to be more of a physical attacker. And he is going to be a speedier Pokemon that with max speed investment, you can actually get him up to 320. So he can actually get a pretty decent speed that with 320, you're going to be catching up to some Pokemon like Greninja. That Greninja gets that 377 speed that you're going to be able to catch up to him. But with an Ash Greninja, the speed is completely shot through the roof. But when we go into Showdown... Showdown, why? Why you do this? Why must you do this, Showdown? Okay, there we go. But when we go into Showdown, and we look at a Mimikyu set for real, we get basically just a speedy attacker. That we give him the focus sash, so he'll be able to survive a hit if someone breaks the disguise. And we just get a free turn to set up a sword stance, and then just slam into him next turn. That first turn sword stance, you're going to be getting up to an extremely high attack, and then you can just completely tank. That with only 2 weaknesses, he's not really going to be taking much from anything. That you can Shadow Claw, get rid of all ghost types. You can play rough, get rid of a lot of types. Like if you took him to the Elite Four in Sun and Moon, you could just sweep through the fighting type Pokemon guy in one hit. And then he's got Leech Life, so if they do manage to land a hit and it doesn't take all your health, okay, I'ma take that back out of your damage. And then when it comes to EVs, just basic speed investment. You get the 252 in the speed, the 252 in the attack, and just give him a Jolly Nature. And that basically gives him exactly what you need, that you're not really going to be lacking in anything. And that's normally the way to use Mimikyu, and it's kind of what I said before, except what I said before, I had Bulk Up instead of Swords Dance, and I had Thunder Wave, because I didn't know Mimikyu actually had access to Swords Dance. I don't think it was that well known yet. So when we move on to the second Mimikyu set, we see this is kind of a more setup Mimikyu, and Golisopod is has a setup side too, but Mimikyu's more setup bulky. That with the 55 in the HP and then just the 80 in defense and 105 in the special defense, you're going to be able to take a few hits. That 246 in special defense is going to save you from a few hits. So again, we've got the disguise ability, but this time we're running with an Aguav Berry, because if you don't know what the Aguav Berry is, it's basically, there were those berries before Sun and Moon, that when you got down to 25% health, it heals you by 25%. Well, they extremely beefed them to where now they heal 50% when you get to 25. So they basically made Citrus Berry with lower requirement just to make him more of a troll. Troll. And then when we look at his moves, he's basically just set up for days. That we get Thunder Wave, first turn disguise, try and paralyze something on the opponent's field. And then next turn just go into substitute. And then we have Copycat, so if they're using a move that was stab, we can just steal that. And then we just have Leech Life to get back a little health if we need it. Because, let's face it, Mimikyu's gonna need health if it's gonna stay on the field. But that's it for Mimikyu. Like I said, there's not really many ways to use him still, but he's still good in a few ways. Moving on to Golisopod, he is just an absolute brawler that you want the attacks. You want Swords Dance, First Impression, Aqua Jet, and Leech Life. That he's just going to completely wreck because of his emergency exit ability and the red card. That if he survives a hit with the red card, he's just going to make your opponent swap out. And with the emergency exit, if it's something you don't want to fight with a Golisopod and you go down to below 50%, okay, I can switch out too. And then it's basically just a setup to wall out. That you got Swords Dance, you got Leech Life, you got Aqua Jet, and you got First Impression. And First Impression only works on the first turn he's on the field. So if he switches in, First Impression has to be the first move you use. So that's why I run 2 bug moves. I usually don't run 2 moves of the same type unless it's absolutely necessary. But with Golisopod, it kind of is necessary. That First Impression only working that first turn, you're not going to want to use it that often. So you basically just set up for Swords Dance, and with that 383 base attack, with all investments, you're going to be reaching somewhere around 766 base attack. And that's broken. That's too high for words. I think that's higher than if you completely invested in a... I think it's higher if you completely HP invested in a Guzzlord. And Guzzlord's got like 580 in his base HP. That's nuts. And then, when we move on to the next Golisopod, basically same thing as the first one, just hit the opponent fast and strongly. That, with the 252 in the defense, or 252 in the HP, sorry, and the 252 in the special defense, you're rounding out all your weaknesses, and then with the defense, you've got pretty good protection. And with the Assault Vest, bringing up your special defense even more, you kind of just set up for win. And then you've got First Impression, Razor Shell, Rock Slide, and Sucker Punch. That with Sucker Punch, You get a hit off, it doesn't kill, okay, next turn I can just Sucker Punch and finish you off. And then you just got Razor Shell, 50% chance to lower the defense. Rock Slide, 30% chance to flinch. He's basically just a sweeper when you look at him from these standpoints. And just give him an Adamant Nature just to get that attack up to right where you need it to be. And that's the same thing for this one, that usually when you're running a Golisopod, you want to have the attack stat maxed out. That you want to have an Adamant Nature, except for this one. This Golisopod is complete setup, that we've got leftovers, we've got emergency exit, and then we've got spikes to set up for damage on a Pokemon switching in. We've got substitute, so you're not taking that much damage. We've got taunt to block their Sableyes and their Ferrothorns and all that. And then we've just got waterfall for damage, that if you've got all your setup done, you can just hit them for damage and try and kill them. And then you just max invest in the HP and special defense, and give him the, what is that, Careful Nature? Yeah, Careful Nature. And that's basically it for Golisopod. Like I said, really only a sweeper. I think that setup, though, is actually pretty good, because it will run for a few turns, and get you a decent setup for the rest of your turn. But anyway, hopefully you guys like this. If you did, go ahead and hit the like button as always, and I'll see you guys later.